in the case of plants, what happens is that the gaseous exchange takes place by, do you know what is that structure known as?
Transpiration?
No, transpiration is a process. I'm asking about
Yes.
you. Like, what is the structure from which the gaseous exchange is taking place?
Like it's take place from a tree, right?
But in a, like, not exactly tree, but leaves. Let's say leaves. So in the leaves, it takes place from where? That is my question. There, okay. Do you remember the structure which is known as stomata?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. So this stomata, which is a pore-like structure, okay, it is a pore-like structure, and this structure is responsible for the gaseous exchange in the plants. Understood?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yes. So what happens? Carbon dioxide, okay, both the carbon dioxide and the oxygen, both of them are exchanged through the stomata. So for example, if the plant is taking in the carbon dioxide, it will go inside from the stomata. And if the plant is giving out oxygen, so it will come out from the stomata. Understood?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Now see, what happens during the daytime? Okay. During the day, what happens? The plants
Plants get
take,
CO2.
hmm,
Take
the plants take in CO2 and they give out oxygen, isn't it?
oxygen. Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Okay, just a second. Yes. So during the day, the plants take in carbon dioxide and they give out oxygen. But what happens during the night?
Ma'am, photosynthesis take place.
During the
Like
night,
in desert plants, right?
see, I'll tell you. In the case of plants, what happens during the daytime? Okay, the plant has to perform photosynthesis, isn't it? So as to perform photosynthesis, the plant takes in carbon dioxide. Why? Because the plant requires carbon dioxide, water, chlorophyll, along with the presence of sunlight to perform photosynthesis. This is the reason why during the daytime, the plants take in carbon dioxide and they give out oxygen. But during the night, it means that no more sunlight is there. So when that happens, then the plants will take in the oxygen and they will give out carbon dioxide. So the reverse thing will happen during the night. Okay, why? Because photosynthesis can only be performed in the presence of sunlight. It means at the night time there is no sunlight, so no photosynthesis can be performed, isn't it? So this is the reason why the plants take in oxygen and give out carbon dioxide only during the night, but not in the day. Understood?
yes, ma'am.
Yes. Now, in the case of animals, okay, in the case of animals, we take in what? What is the gas that we take in?
O2.
Yes. So the animals that they take in oxygen from the atmosphere
Yes, ma'am. And gives
and
out CO2.
yes, and they give up, excuse me, and they give out carbon dioxide. This happens in the case of animals, but in the case of plants, it is very different, isn't it?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Now see, we are talking about the animals, so you might be assuming it on the land, isn't it? Like we live on the land.
Yes,
Now, yes. Now, what happens to those animals that live in the water? How do they get oxygen?
ma'am. From the water.
Correct. the water also has some dissolved oxygen in them. Okay. And those organisms that live in the water, they take the oxygen from the dissolved water. Understood?
Yes.
Yes. And apart from that, you might have noticed that there are some aquatic animals that, come out of the surface of the water and then go back in. Like
Yes,
whales. Have
ma'am.
you seen the movement of whales?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, they are huge and they come out of the surface of the water and then they go back in again. So that mechanism is basically done to take in oxygen from the atmosphere also. Okay. So apart from taking the atmosphere, like the oxygen which is there in the water, the aquatic animals, they take in the atmosphere, like atmospheric oxygen also. Understood?
Yes, ma'am.
Is there any doubts?
No.
No. Okay. Hiba, do you have any doubts?
No, ma'am.
Okay. If there is any doubt, you people can ask me. Okay. Now, see what happens whenever we take in the oxygen. Okay, it is quickly distributed to all the different cells in our body. Okay, and when it goes to different cells, then our cells use this oxygen and that oxygen is absorbed. Is it clear?
Yes.
So yes, so in the case of human beings, now if we talk about in human beings, okay, in the case of human beings, what happens? First of all, we take in the oxygen through our nostrils, isn't it? So first thing, like if you're talking about taking in of oxygen, so first it goes into the nostrils, isn't it? First it would go into the nostrils, and after that, like see, in the, like there is a reason why it goes into the nostrils and not anywhere else. First being reasons that in the nostrils, you might have noticed there are tiny, tiny hairs present, isn't it? Very fine hairs are present in the nostrils.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, and those hairs are known as nasal hairs. Okay, they are known as nasal hairs. So what happens? These hairs are present so as to catch the, you can say the dirty or the foreign particle that is there in the air. Okay, anything that is undesirable is caught by the nostrils, the nasal hairs in the nostrils. Understood?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Apart from this process, what happens? The nostrils or the nasal like cavity, that is also responsible for humidification of air. Now see, the air which is present in the atmosphere, the temperature of that air will be different from what is there in our body, isn't it? So
Yes.
what these nostrils or the nasal hairs and the whole passage does is that it humidifies the hair. It also catches, the foreign particles from it. And you might have noticed that the whole entire, like the inner part of your nose has mucus in it. Okay. That mucus is also there for trapping those dirt and dust. Understood?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So now from the nostrils, the air would finally go into the throat area. Okay. So it would go into the throat area, which is, you can also call it as the pharynx. Pharynx,
Yes, ma'am.
pharynx and larynx, both of them are there. So now the air would go into the pharynx. Understood? Now, from here, it would grow, like it would finally go into the trachea. It would go into the trachea, and from the trachea it would go into the lungs. So the final destination of the air or the oxygen is in the lungs. Understood?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now see, this throat area, okay, there is the presence of cartilaginous rings. Okay, rings that are made up of cartilage, they are present in the throat. So you can write rings of cartilage are present in the throat. And do you know what is the function of these rings?
Yes, ma'am.
Tell me.
Ma'am, it ensure that the air that passes does not collapse.
Yes, the rings of the cartilage, they, they have sort of like whenever like we are breathing, it is a very, important process, first of all. Now, these structures that are involved in the conduction of the air, they don't, they can't be like, destroyed. So to protect the throat from collapsing, okay, the rings of cartilage are present. Understood?
Yes,
Now, when the air reaches the lungs, so from the lungs, inside the lungs, there are present many alveoli. Okay. Alveoli are, you can call it like a bag or a sac like structure or a balloon like structure. Okay. Finally, what they do, this is the site. You can write alveoli is the site of exchange of gases. Okay. So whenever we take in oxygen and give out carbon dioxide, it primarily occurs at this site, which is the alveoli. Is it clear?
yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now alveoli, you can call it as the site of like the gaseous exchange, and you can see the walls of the alveoli are extremely thin. Okay, they are extremely thin. Now see, whenever we are talking about gases, there is one thing we should know, that all the gases, they move through diffusion process. Okay, do you know what is diffusion? Can you explain diffusion to me? Does anybody have any idea about diffusion?
Ma'am, is it like osmosis and diffusion that you are talking about?
Hmm.
Ma'am, when the like higher concentration to lower concentration.
You are right, but what? Higher concentration to lower concentration of what?
Or what? I forgot.
See, if I'm talking to you about the gases, so the movement of gases from the region of their higher concentration to the region of their lower concentration will be known as diffusion. But again, if we are talking about water or any liquid, then we will call it as osmosis. Understand?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. So it is osmosis in the case of like liquid or water, and it is diffusion in the case of gases. Is it clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, very good. Now moving forward, now as we know that this alveoli, they are very thin. Now if a surface is very thin, it means that the diffusion would be happening very easily, isn't
Yes,
it?
ma'am.
Yes. So like there are few things that you must know. First of all, there the alveoli is a balloon-like structure. Okay, and then the wall of the like walls of the alveoli are extremely thin. Then you must also know that the alveoli is richly supplied with blood vessels. Okay, it means that many blood vessels are present at the alveoli. Okay, this means that a lot of blood flow happens there. Okay, and since I told, like, see, whenever oxygen comes into our body, we have inhaled oxygen. It goes from the nostrils. Yes, the oxygen goes from the nostril to the throat, and then from the throat to the trachea, then to the lungs, and then to the alveoli. And after the alveoli, the oxygen would go into the blood. Okay. Yes. Now, as soon as the oxygen reaches the blood, and we already know that blood is present all over our body. So the oxygen is transported to different parts of our body through the blood. And since alveoli is richly supplied with blood vessels, it means that their blood is in abundance. So easily the blood takes the oxygen from the alveoli and then it supplies the oxygen to the whole body. Understood?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh. Now see, during the process of breathing or taking in of like oxygen, what happens? We lift our ribs, okay? Our ribs are lift up, our diaphragm flattens, okay? The diaphragm flattens. So during the process of breathing in, okay, this is like for like when we breathe in. So in that case, we lift our ribs, the diaphragm flattens, and the chest cavity enlarges. Okay, the chest cavity enlarges. Okay, and with that, the oxygen comes into the body. Is it clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. And as soon as the oxygen enters our body, it goes into the lungs and then goes into the alveoli. And finally, from the alveoli, where will the oxygen go? Tell me.
Ma'am, like blood take the O2 and transport it to all over the body.
Correct. So from the alveoli, the oxygen will be transported by the blood because blood is present all over the body, isn't it? All of our cells, every organ, every little thing in our body is supplied with blood vessel or blood is there. Blood reaches that area. Is it clear?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, after the blood transports the oxygen to different like cells of the body, that cell will utilize the oxygen. And when anything utilizes the oxygen, what will it give out? Tell me, what will it give out?
O2.
Carbon dioxide will be given out. So now this carbon dioxide is again collected by the blood. Okay. The blood collects the carbon dioxide again and then it releases it into the alveoli. Okay, like blood supply is there in the alveoli. So alveoli gives the oxygen to the blood and then that blood transported to different parts of the body. Now different parts of the body or different cells of the body, they would use that oxygen and then they would give out the carbon dioxide. Is it clear? Now the
Yes.
carbon dioxide that has been given out, it will be taken again by the blood. The blood carries the carbon dioxide to the alveoli and then from the alveoli it would follow the reverse part. So as the oxygen like carbon dioxide would reach the alveoli, then it would go into the lungs, it would go into the trachea, it would go into the throat. Finally, it will be expelled out from the nostrils. So if we are talking about the carbon dioxide, it would follow a whole different or reversed pathway. Is this whole thing clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Now you must remember that when we are breathing in, it means that when we take in air, it means that the balloon-like structure, which was alveoli, it was like swollen, isn't it? Like when air gets inside, it gets puffy. Now, what happens when the air goes out? So see, at that time, it is not possible that every single air would come out. So sometimes in the lungs, not sometimes, but in the lungs and in the alveoli, in the lungs, basically what happens, there is a little amount of air that is left in the lungs. Okay. This is known as the residual volume. Residual, and you understand, it is the left behind thing. Okay. So residual volume, you can note it down as volume of air present in the lungs even after expiration or breathing out, even after breathing out. Is it clear?
Yes,
Yes.
ma'am.
Yes. So this amount, like the residual volume, is the amount or the volume of air that will be present in the lungs even after breathing out. Understood? So that your lungs don't collapse. Now, see what happens, like we saw, like this diffusion, like see, the whole mechanism of diffusion can only work when distance is short. Okay. When the distance is large, like in the human body, our body is so large, the organs are there. So in the in the case of like the body, when the body or the organs are large, what happens is that diffusion cannot deliver it everywhere. Okay, that is why we are using blood. And blood, do you know that blood has hemoglobin?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. So in the blood, what happens? That hemoglobin, it is written as HB in short, that hemoglobin forms, like it takes in the oxygen. Okay, as I said that the blood transports the oxygen everywhere, but in the blood there is a carrier of oxygen, that which is known as your hemoglobin. Okay, and you can say that hemoglobin is the respiratory pigment. Okay, it is the respiratory pigment in human body. Understood?
Yes, ma'am.
So basically, if I'm saying that the blood is carrying the oxygen, it means that inside the blood, hemoglobin is present, which is a respiratory pigment, and that pigment is responsible for the carrying of oxygen. And do you know that the hemoglobin is present in the RBCs of the blood? You know what are RBCs?
Red blood cell.
Yes, correct. So our blood contains the red blood cells, and inside the red blood cells, hemoglobin is present. Is it clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
Yes, ma'am.
okay, very. Now see, on the basis of solubility, solubility, you understand? The property of anything to be soluble in water?
Yes.
Yes. So on the basis of solubility, you must remember that carbon dioxide is more soluble than oxygen. Okay. Carbon dioxide is more soluble in than oxygen, and that is why it is mostly transported in the form, like it is dissolved in the blood and then it is, meaning whenever like anything get mixed with the blood, it has to have a solubility, isn't it? For example, you're mixing like sugar in water, then after a while you see that the sugar gets dissolved in the water, isn't it? So same thing has to happen here also, meaning whichever gas it is, whether it is carbon dioxide or it is oxygen, so it has to get dissolved in order to be transported. And since carbon dioxide is more soluble, so carbon dioxide will be dissolved more as compared to oxygen. Is it clear?
Yes, ma'am.
So is that whole process of breathing clear to everybody?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you have any doubts up till now? Anyone? Are there any
No,
doubts?
ma'am.
Okay, very good. Now see, we are talking about blood a lot. So let us see more about the blood only. So see, blood can also be known as the fluid connective tissue. Okay, the fluid connective tissue of our body. Now see, the blood is present everywhere in the body. It means that the blood is, connecting everything all together because it is present every single, like at every single location. So this is the reason why. And obviously the blood is a fluid form, it is liquid. So the blood can also be known as a fluid connective tissue. Now, the the blood contains two components. Okay, there are two components of the blood. One is the plasma, and then there are cells of the blood like RBC, WBC, all those are cells. Okay, so blood has two components. One of the component is plasma, okay, and one is the cells, different kind of cells present in the blood. Now, this plasma, it is responsible for transport of food. Okay, plasma transports food. First thing it does is to transport food. It also transports carbon dioxide. And apart from transporting carbon dioxide, it also transports the nitrogenous waste. Okay, the nitrogenous waste like urea, uric acid and all. So the plasma, what are the functions of the plasma? So the plasma transports food, it transports carbon dioxide and nitrogenous waste. Understood?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, very good. Now, what was RBC transporting? Do you remember?
Ma'am,
Tell me.
oxygen?
Yes. So RBCs, they transport oxygen. And what is present in the RBC that transports the oxygen?
Hemoglobin.
Very good. It is the respiratory pigment which is present in the RBC. Now see, WBC, it fights diseases. Understood? It fights diseases. So these are the functions of the components of the blood. Is it clear up till now?
Yes.
Okay, now you people can note it down and then we will move forward. Tell me when to scroll the screen and then I will scroll the screen for you.
So, ma'am, WBC function is to fight disease, right?
Yes.
There is no any other function of WBC.
No, WBC are involved in immunity and fighting diseases only. It is not involved in the transportation of gases or respiration. Okay.
Okay.
Whenever our body has any pathogen inside, like any bacteria, any virus, the WBC starts fighting that. Okay. That is the function of WBC. Understood?
Yes.
Okay. Now you can, like, are you noting it down?
Ma'am, I have noted. Like
Up to
when you
where?
were explaining, I was writing down.
Okay. Both of you have like noted it down?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, very good. Amazing. Now let us move forward. We were talking about the fluid connective tissue, which was the blood. Now see, to transport the blood, meaning to circulate the blood throughout our body, we have to, like, we need a pump, isn't it? Like how water is pumped into the, like, water tanks. Same way, we have to have a pumping organ. And now we are coming to the pumping organ, which is the heart. Okay, so you can say that the blood is pumped by the heart. Now, the heart, it is a muscular organ. Okay, so our heart is a muscular organ, meaning it is made up of muscles. And apart from that, the size, you can say the size of the heart is equal to the size of the fist. Okay, that is the size of the heart. Okay, the size of the heart is equal to the size of the fist. Now see, the human heart, okay, if we are talking about the human heart is four chambered. Okay, it means that four different, you can say, pockets are there in the heart, or chambers are there. Okay, what are those four chambers? The first one is right, okay, right auricle. Then we have right ventricle. Then we have left auricle. And we have left ventricle. Okay, so these are the four chambers of the heart. Okay, if I draw it in a box form, it sort of looks like this. Okay, four different chambers are there. This is right auricle, this is right ventricle, this is left auricle, and this is left ventricle. Understood?
Yes.
Okay, now see what happens, that oxygen rich blood has to be pumped from the heart. Okay, and when the heart pumps that blood, then it is carried to different parts of the body. Understood? And the carbon dioxide rich blood, which is the impure blood, it goes to the lungs. And from the lungs, it is expelled out of the body. Is this clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Now, oxygen-rich blood, it comes from the lungs to the upper chamber of the heart, which is the left auricle. So if this is the lungs, okay, so from the lungs, oxygen-rich blood would come to the left auricle of the heart, and then from the left auricle, it would move into the left ventricle. Okay, and when the left ventricle would contract, meaning when the left auricle would contract means, it would like exert pressure. So the blood from the left auricle will move into the left ventricle, and when the left ventricle would contract, then the oxygenated blood will be given to the whole body. Understood? Is this pathway clear to you?
Yes, ma'am.
Are there any doubts up till now?
No, ma'am.
Okay, very good. Now see, deoxygenated blood, it comes from the body cells, isn't it? Our body uses the oxygen and gives out carbon dioxide. So this carbon dioxide again mixes with the blood, and this blood is carried into the right auricle, and then from the right auricle, it goes into the right ventricle, and from the right ventricle, it would again go to the lungs for purification. Is it clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, this was the sort of like how the blood is transported. Now talking about the structures, which is auricles and ventricles. So see, amongst them, you must know this one fact, which is that the ventricles, they are thicker than the auricles. Okay. You can write that ventricles have thicker walls as compared to auricles. Okay. Because the reason behind this is that the ventricles need to pump more blood and they need to pump it to different organs. Okay, that is the reason why the ventricles wall, they are thicker as compared to the auricles. Okay. Now, we saw that there are different chambers in the heart. So, at the junction of each chambers, okay, there are walls present. Okay, these are known as walls. Walls are sort of like a flappy opening. So when this auricle would contract, it would exert the pressure on the wall. Then the wall will sort of open and the blood would flow into the ventricle. Okay. Now, when the ventricles are pumping the blood to the body, then these walls will close so that the blood cannot go back into the auricle. This is wrong. Okay. Backflow of blood is very harmful. So, to prevent that, walls are present. Understood?
Yes.
Yes. So, that is basically all there is to know about the human heart and how it functions. Now, do you people have any doubts in this?
No, ma'am.
No, ma'am.
Okay. Is there anything you people want me to, explain again up till now?
No, ma'am.
Okay. So then this was all there is you can know about the human heart. So let us keep till here only for today's class. Okay. And then in the next class, we will see how the lung is giving out oxygenated blood. Okay.
Ma'am, I want to ask you something.
Tell me.
Ma'am, like you told that from lungs, like
Hmm.
blood comes to left, like
Oracle. Oracle. Hmm.
so it only comes to the lungs or any other things?
See, as you know that oxygen is present in the lungs, and then it is given to the blood from the lungs only. So since only the lungs have the oxygenated blood, that is why this oxygenated blood is coming from the lungs to the left auricle. Now see, this left auricle will only receive oxygen rich blood, whereas the right auricle would only receive the carbon dioxide rich blood. Understood? And there
So,
is
ma'am,
no...
what's the function of that pulmonary arteries? Is there any function of it in this process?
Yes, definitely. See, in general, okay, first there is arteries, okay, and then there is veins, okay. So arteries, they are, both of them are blood vessels, okay, both of them are blood vessels. So what happens is that these arteries, they carry oxygenated blood, okay. The arteries carry oxygenated blood, whereas the veins carry deoxygenated blood. Is it clear up till now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, there is an exception. There are two blood vessels. One is known as pulmonary artery and one is known as pulmonary vein. So, as I told you that all the arteries would carry oxygenated blood, whereas all the veins would carry deoxygenated blood. But in the case of pulmonary artery and pulmonary vein, the pulmonary artery carries deoxygenated blood. Okay. Deoxygenated blood is carried by the pulmonary artery, whereas the pulmonary vein would carry oxygenated blood. Oxygenated blood. Okay. Now, this pulmonary vein, okay, as I told you that it would carry oxygenated blood, this pulmonary vein arises from the lungs. Okay, and that pulmonary vein carries the oxygen into the left auricle. Now, from the right ventricle, meaning when the deoxygenated blood is pumped out from the right ventricle, it is carried by pulmonary artery to the lungs. Okay, the presence of arteries and veins is to carry the blood from one place to another. Okay, so the pulmonary vein would carry the oxygenated blood from the lungs to the left auricle, whereas the deoxygenated blood would be carried from the right ventricle through the pulmonary artery to the lungs. And in the lungs, again, oxygenation of the blood would take place, and then from the lungs, the pulmonary vein would carry it again into the left auricle. Is it clear? Tell me, is it clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So now, are you familiar with all the functions of veins, arteries, different chambers of the heart? Both of you?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you have any doubts?
No, ma'am.
The question which you wanted to ask me, is that clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, very good. Now, since you people have no doubts, you can just go through your book once, okay, right now, and tell me if you find any doubts or ask me anything from the book that you